Not exactly good, but it's wild. Just like our show. Hello, everyone. And welcome
That
to
was
the
a quick
Courtroom.
transition.
That was a quick transition, though. No, this show, I love doing this show, and I love doing Killing It Month, which is what we're doing it. We're killing it tonight with another film with the word kill in the title. This one is a star-studded film that has pretty much all of Hollywood starring in it. And we are looking at A Time to Kill from 1996. And tonight I have a star-studded cast with me of crew members who have braved this courtroom drama with me. And first off, she's back with us from the horror retrospective. It's Kara. Hello, Kara. How are you?
Hello. Always glad to be back.
Always happy to have you here. And none other, my right-hand man, the guy who he just keeps coming back for more. He's like a glutton for punishment or something. It's another than Mr. Ian Simmons from Kicking the Seat. Hello, Ian.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. So glad everyone could venture down the stairs, pull up a chair, and pop their favorite drink as we talk movie spoilers, which we will tonight. And Ian, you get to do the synopsis tonight for A Time to Kill.
It's based on a John Grisham novel. Couple of rednecks in Mississippi. Where is this?
Louisiana.
Somewhere.
No, it's Mississippi. It's Canton, Mississippi.
That's right.
Canton.
Way down south. They're driving around drunk, tearing up the town. They come across this little black girl. They kidnap her. They do awful, despicable things to her. Samuel L. Jackson plays the young girl's father, who takes it upon himself to execute them in a courthouse with a machine gun as they're being brought into trial. And then he is put on trial for their murder. And Matthew McConaughey plays the white local attorney who defends him and against not only the murder charges, but against the prejudices of this town, who helps to import and resurrect the Klan. And there's fire bombings, riots, burnt crosses, an entire melee of problems surrounding this trial. And it's about, mid-90s social justice and, empathy and all that good stuff. It's also more of a cartoon that I remember it being back in 1996. But it really works. And I had to blow my wife's mind by asking her, hey, honey, what do you think the next movie that the director of this film directed? What was it? I don't know. Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I know.
That's the synopsis.
It's interesting because I really, outside of Batman and Robin, I actually enjoy a lot of Joel Schumacher's work in various degrees. But the Kiefer Sutherland's going to show up, he is. So, but I usually enjoy his films, except for Batman and Robin, though. Batman Forever's worse. But still, yes, it's from that director, though that you won't see on the poster ever. Luckily, this came out before Batman and Robin, so they wouldn't.
But after Batman Forever.
It did, and they didn't have from the director of Batman Forever A Time to Kill. It doesn't work. It doesn't, especially given the subject matter. Whew, boy, howdy. Kara, we'll start with you. Remember when you first saw this film?
I saw it in theater when it was first out.
Mm-hmm.
And actually it was because a librarian friend of mine had told me about the movie and said it was originally a book. So I read the book first. So I liked how it's pretty close to the book. There are a few little differences here and there. And I remember back then at the time, the local newspaper even read Uvalde's own Matthew McConaughey, which I had no idea who he was at the time. So I didn't know why it was a big deal.
Well, all right.
Yeah, this was his first like breakout. I know he
Yeah,
was
it
in
was.
Dazed and Confused a couple
Yeah.
years earlier, but this was like, and it's such a meteoric rise because he was like this nothing like towny extra dirtbag in that movie, and then he's like all polished and slick looking and like ready for the cover of GQ magazine in this one.
Well, he looked a lot like his Lincoln Lawyer character later on that he would end up playing. In fact, when I first saw him, I'm like, is he playing the same guy? because he almost the exact same suit and everything, and he doesn't age. I don't understand that. He looks like the same. I don't get that. Little more haggard now, but back then, when it was like, what? That's Matthew McConaughey. But yeah. What about you, Ian? You remember when you first saw this? And
Yeah, the one and only time I saw it was in the theater back in '96 when it
sure.
first came out, and I remember being pretty blown away by it,
Mhm.
and then watching it last night or 2 nights ago for the show. I just wondered why I was such an idiot back in '96. Like the opening of this movie is the most ridiculous like box checking of redneck tropes that I've ever seen. And it's like they went for 10 tropes when they should have stopped at like 7. But I mean it's a solid movie, but there's just like some points where I'm like, yeah, it's Akiva Goldsman. Like he's kind of trash. The screenwriter. Yeah.
Go ahead, Cara. What did you say?
Oh no, I was just laughing.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, this was when Grisham had his run of movies.
Yeah.
It was like someone like, oh, strike while the iron is hot, because you had Mr. Cruz in The Firm, and then the next year was Pelican Brief, and then after that was The Client. All three of those films were actually very solid, and actually we reviewed one of those on the Spoiler Room. Check it out, folks, on the Spoiler Room archives. Anyway, and then you get A Time to Kill, and what surprised me about Time to Kill, when I saw it, I enjoyed it, but it's because of the cast, and I was what, 21 at the time? Yeah, I would have been 21 at the time. So, but I really enjoyed the cast in this quite a bit, which is why I went to see it. I didn't read Grisham's books because, I was done with college, high school, and I was in college. And if I didn't have to read for a class, I really didn't want to read because I was tired of reading. But so I wasn't familiar with the book, but I enjoyed the movie quite a bit. I remember mostly, yeah. I mean, Sam Jackson, from Pulp Fiction. So it was like every person who was either just the hot item or just coming up as the hot item was thrown into this movie.
Yeah, I mean there's character actors out the wazoo. I mean Charles S. Dutton plays he's like the
sheriff,
head court officer or whatever. Yeah, I guess he would have been the
He's
sheriff.
the sheriff, yeah.
Chris Cooper. I gotta pull over a second.
Yeah.
And just one of the great things about this movie is you watch it and you realize that Samuel L. Jackson used to be an actor before he was body swapped with whatever the fuck showed up in the Marvels. Yeah, it's a great performance.
And everyone got a little taste of what Ian's special is going to be like when he has the features the Marvels on his live stream this week, Thursday. But there's a little hint. But no, I mean, everybody, that's the thing, is everybody's really acting. They're putting their all into this. You could tell. I mean, you got Sandra Bullock in here. I thought she played off well against Matthew McConaughey. You're right. Even minor characters that show up in this, you're just like, I know that character. I know that, Oliver Pratt. He was like the leading supporting actor for a long time.
Well, that's another great thing is like you can watch this and it's full of like movie duos.
Yeah.
Like Oliver Platt and Kiefer Sutherland were in Flatliners, directed by Joel Schumacher. You've got Kevin Spacey playing the prosecuting attorney with Chris Cooper. They were in American Beauty together. Chris Cooper and Matthew McConaughey, I think it was the same year, were in Lone Star by John Sayles. It's this crazy, like, it's not just that everybody in Hollywood was in this movie. It's like everyone in Hollywood would go on to like make movies with each other, like almost based on this film.
Well, the 90s were like that. The 90s were almost like, the old studio system. You had these group of performers, and we talked about it before when we were doing the 52 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. We talked about that with films like in the 90s, to where it seemed like this group of individuals were always working together. I mean, that's where you got the Brat Pack idea from or whatnot. It's just they always seem to be in those same films for a while. It's like, who cares what else? These guys are going to be in this movie and in this movie and in this movie. Donald Sutherland showed up. I forgot Donald Sutherland was in this as a drunk lawyer, and then who played the doctor who ended up was being discredited. He showed up in here as well. He's a character actor. I mean, you're right. Chris Cooper. I mean,
no, Mark, you got to pay your due respects. That's M. Emmett Walsh.
Emmett Walsh. Thank you. That's Emmett. He shows up in here.
He's one half of, I think I've mentioned this before, but Roger Ebert had one of his movie rules was the M. Emmett Walsh, Harry Dean Stanton rule, which is if either of those actors showed up in the movie, it instantly made the movie better.
Yeah. So, I mean, as it goes, as far as courtroom dramas go, it's, I don't know, it's pretty by the number.
It is, up until that last, McConaughey's closing argument.
Yeah.
I think that's still one of the most, I mean, even though I had seen it, decades ago, I sometimes still think about that. Like the way that he convinced, the way he swayed the jury. And the reason he did it is, because of that scene that he had shared with Sam Jackson earlier in the jail cell, like the night before. And even Sam Jackson's character, when he saw what McConaughey did in that moment, he was like, oh my God, it's such a great moment. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the film ends solid. You're right. You do have caricatures in here. I mean, Kara, could Kiefer Sutherland be any more of the stereotypical prejudiced redneck?
I mean, I'm sure he could have probably gone further with it, but he was dirtbaggy enough.
Emily. Well, and then Foreman's dad shows up as the king, the dragon, the grand dragon of the Ku Klux. I'm looking at this going, dumbass.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I saw him. I'm like, that's red.
That's red. What the? I'm like
wearing red.
Wearing red. And turning red later on when he gets set ablaze.
Nights in red satin.
Yeah, and yeah, it is mid-90s here, folks. So, I mean, if you think that's why I chuckle. I chuckle when people talk about, all these woke films and these wearing the politics. I'm like, did you watch the movies in the 90s? I mean, it was just as much on its sleeve back then too.
It's different. That the 90s politics are different than woke politics. There's a difference between 90s liberal movies and what's coming out today. But that's a whole other show.
I know that's a whole other show. What I'm saying though is people are acting like, a trend or whatnot of like this is something like, and I'm like, no, this Hollywood's been doing this for years, whether or not, it's the 90s with its politics or our politics today, it's there. Now, again, Cara, you said you read the book. You said it's pretty close to the book?
It's pretty close. Some things here and there are different, but from what I remember, it follows it fairly closely.
So are the rednecks that redneck in the book?
I'd say so.
Yeah. Yeah, I that's the tough part is I'm like, while I have seen people like that, they do exist. I have seen them in real life. To see them just pop up right away in the movie, I forgot how this movie opened at first with them. At first, and I'm just like, wow, those guys are like you said, Ian, They check every box in the book for your stereotypical redneck. But again, there are people like that out there. So I mean, they weren't saying everybody was like that.
That they kind of were. I mean, you've got. It's very clear that they are. That's the thing that one of the things that bothered me about this movie is I needed to know more about the dynamics of this area, because when these two guys are drunk off their ass, tearing through this town, like the quote unquote black part of town, in their pickup with the Confederate flag decal and all this other stuff, they're basically terrorizing people. I'm like, wait, this isn't taking place in the late 50s. This is the mid 90s. I don't know what the dynamics are of this community, because you got a bunch of tough looking, like prototypical gangbanger types that are just like watching as these guys are coming. No, like it's clear because later on they say that, the Klan hasn't operated in this county in like decades.
Right.
So it's not like a situation where you're looking at like Mississippi burning, where the entire town is, Klan and all that stuff, and you got these outsiders coming in. It's not really a mixed community, because you get the feeling that this black part of town over is very kind of rural and set apart. Right. But I have no sense of what the overall like community is. They come together in this town square. I'm like, where is this town in relation to everything else? So it just didn't make sense to me that nobody, like, you're talking about two redneck guys and a group of like 50 other like black town folks of all various ages, including some strapping young like 20 somethings who could and probably would have taken them behind the nearest shed and beaten the crap out of them, if not worse. I'm like, what are you doing? So I didn't understand like the situation of the politics of this movie. It made no sense to me.
What about you, Kara?
I mean, to me, it just seems very small town. Like everybody knows everyone. It's kind of hard to keep a secret. You know everything about everyone. But I didn't really get, and it's probably just because I'm from a small town myself, but I didn't really get a sense of things being too far out, like as far as neighborhoods or areas that people live in. I mean, I got the sense that the Black community lived more out in the country. So I do agree with that. But we see a restaurant scene where we have a whole, Black restaurant. So I do feel
but that's in town. That's in town.
In town. Yeah.
And it's also in a distinct part of town. They call it the black part of town. But you're right. The geography of this opening scene is out in the country. You can see it in the roads. They're not like, there aren't established buildings anywhere. So it could have almost been an entirely different movie about like these two guys go missing and like, you got to figure out what happened. It turns out, well, they were starting up some shit in the wrong part of, the country, and they got a little Southern justice. But I'm watching. I don't understand what I'm watching, except as a contrived setup for a movie. And I'm just like looking at John Grisham, or, I haven't read the novel, but it just felt like someone who has an idea of what the South was like and kind of wrote to that, rather than drawing like well-defined characters, some of whom we see later in the film with a bit more nuance. But I'm like, this needed another draft.
Yeah, I mean, out of the movies that were made of his, this seems like it was the most out of his comfort zone as far as the way it was written. I mean, you look at those other three that I mentioned earlier. You had The Client, The Pelican Brief. You had the Tom Cruise one. I forget. I just had it in front of me. The Firm. Thank you.
Yeah.
All of those were in the urban area. They were mostly in court type. They were handled more. You're right. This one feels more like he was reading newspapers rather than knowing exactly how things were down there. And I might be wrong. I don't know, Kara, if you know more about with Grisham and this story, what motivated him to write this. But for me, it just felt a little bit out of his comfort zone. Like he was writing stuff that he had read off of a Cliff's Notes of the South. but I don't know. It just, you're right. There's a lot of the caricatures in here. Like, I mean, there's really no gray area with any character in here whatsoever.
Except for the one guy who is Mickey Mouse, who was the one kind of clan guy who he seemed, and that was, I think, the most nuanced character you really get, because there isn't like a big speech or anything. You just kind of get the sense that his buddies that he hangs around with, they're all kind of prejudiced in their small town way. But wait a second, you're resurrecting the clan and now we're kidnapping people? This has gone too far.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, remember the clan never left. We just didn't do anything for a few years and they think we don't exist anymore. But we're still in full force. Yeah.
It's not in this area. You have to recruit your own.
Yeah. With your flyers and your poorly printed items. I
went to a clan rally / protest. I want to emphasize the protest part.
Yes.
When I was in high school, they did something out in like the Naperville area here in Illinois, but they were the new clan. They didn't have the hoods and all that stuff. They just had like these white outfits that looked like gas station attendants with like weird patches on them. It was so much fun to shout them down. But yeah. Oh.
Well, was it they made that? Oh, they make that line in here too. They talk about, oh, we got to get the clan. Well, there's some new clan there. Oh, you mean those guys with no hair? No, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about real clan. I did like that. I'm like, oh, damn.
It sounds like a bad Southern cologne. Real clan.
The real clan. Well, and then, what's funny is you can feel like he's trying to play like both sides are exploiting the situation for their own advantage. It just does it very clumsily. Like, you have the NAACP show up because they don't think McConaughey should defend.
It was the ACLU.
Or sorry, the ACLU. I apologize, not the NAACP, but the ACLU show up because they didn't think that Jake, Matthew McConaughey's character, should be defending Carl Lee, Sam Jackson's character. So you get that. Actually, it's one of the better scenes, I think, in the film.
Oh, yeah.
Is when he comes in and he finds the ACLU with the Reverend and their top-notch New York lawyer in there saying, oh, no, he's going to take the, over. So, Ian, did you like this scene in the film?
It was brilliant. I think this is why watching A Time to Kill Now is so frustrating, because you got these kinds of scenes with this brilliant little game of chess about how the NAACP, now the ACLU, thank you. Yeah. The ACLU has so far raised $5,000 and the Reverend has collected $2,000 in the plate. And McConaughey says, well, the ACLU certainly has to know that if I'm defending this client and the ACLU is raising funds for the defense, that money has to go to me unless my client says that he wants you to represent him, and he doesn't.
Right.
And then I think Sam Jackson says to the minister, he's like, it's going to look really bad if we go around telling people that all the money they put in to support my family was going, if you're pocketing it. So I want that check too.
Yeah.
That it's a great moment.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes me wonder what the hell is up with that opening 10 minutes. Yeah.
The opening 10 minutes which is what surprises me. It's one of those things where I understand Grisham was the hot item at this point in time in the mid-90s. His books, like we mentioned, the other three movies that were based off of his books were just, fantastic. You had Sandra Bullock in there who shows up, in here. You got all the everybody wanted in on a Grisham story, but the story that they pick has probably one of the darkest subjects for a wide release film that I have seen. I mean, we're not talking just child in peril. We're talking some very nasty things that at least we don't, thank God, get a whole lot of, but we get the implication, and they let your, then it's not until the very end where we find out everything that actually happened to her. But I'm like watching this going, man, for a theatrical film, this thing is dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, who are they marketing this to? Because, I mean, we all know, Kara, you're a horror fan and whatnot. But it's, there's some things that it's not going to appeal to a wide audience. It's almost like saying, hey, we're going to wide release the Serbian film, right?
Oh, people loved that one.
Yeah. But would you say this subject matter is fairly dark for a wide release movie?
It is, and I'll be honest, I kind of didn't stick around for the beginning of the film just because I didn't want to see that.
Yeah.
So, I kind of came back after a little while after the little girl was crying for her father.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing is the way it all played. I think it could have been handled better. And still get their point across than what they do with this opening, because this opening, so many caricatures, and then it just carries through from there through a lot of the film. The court stuff is actually pretty interesting. And I liked Sandra Bullock's character in this, in all honesty. I outside of the fact of that, of course, we've got Matthew McConaughey, all right, and Sandra Bullock, two rather attractive performers who are working close together. And, we have that that sexual tension. And I'm like, that feels out of character for Jake, for Matthew McConaughey. He was so big on the family and that. And I understand they go through some traumatic events together in the beginning, but still, that seemed a little forced, of the tension between them. Am I off on that, or?
I wouldn't say it's forced. I'd say it's underdeveloped, because they got into a real work wife situation. They're spending a lot of time together. He was completely stressed out with not only the case but all the personal stuff, as you mentioned. His wife took the kids and moved away, or the daughter, Pet Cemetery style. That came to mind.
Yeah, it did.
when he was looking, right, yeah. when he was looking for his dog in the rubble of his blown up house, and then the dog comes back, I was like, no. Dog comes running out of the woods. I'm like, don't do it. But no, so yeah, I like that they go right up to the precipice and then they pull back. But you talk about a tough decision. You're talking about 1996 Sandra Bullock and 1996 sweaty, just walking around in whatever that was, Ashley Judd.
Yeah.
I don't put me in that position.
What was it too? I know it's the South, Kara. Hope you don't mind me putting you on the spot a little bit. I know you're in the South. Does no one own a fan or air conditioning? Because everybody was sweaty in this movie, constantly.
Yeah, it depends on the family, I guess. Some people don't have central air, so they do depend on those box fans.
It just seemed like everybody, even if they were in a temperature controlled room, they were still sweaty. It was like everybody was sweaty. I'm like, what? Yeah, Ashley Judd was sweaty, and McConaughey's sweaty, and even the supporting cast was sweaty. It was like special effects guy, he must have had a lot of spray bottles. It's like, okay, between takes, okay, let's go.
He was probably doing that without the spray bottles in between takes, with being with Ashley Judd and Sandra Bullock.
Yeah.
And Emmett Walsh. Let's be honest.
And Emmett Walsh, he was looking pretty good when he wasn't drunk, when his character wasn't drunk. But
but even that was a great moment because he was basically the shrink that they brought in to testify about Sam Jackson's Carl Lee's mental state when he committed these murders, and Kevin Spacey's character immediately discredits him by bringing up a statutory rape conviction from like the 60s,
right?
And it's like, wow, that really does, that's a poor poor decision on McConaughey's part. But then later on, I think it was during the closing arguments,
right?
He says, well, what if I told you that this man was
She was only
convicted of statutory rape, 17, and he was like 21 or something, and they've been married for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, I think, why, because you see it on the stand, you're like, what's going on here?
Right.
Because he almost, I think, forgotten about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that was that crazy thing that happened when we were kids, and now I'm like in my 60s. What are we talking about? Oh shit, that's right.
Right. Well, and that's just because before that, when the prosecution brought up their doctor about stating how Carl Lee was perfectly in sound mind when he did it, they had to discredit him, which was a little help from Sandra Bullock's character, Ellen. Ellen, she happened to sneak into his office and get some files, and then we find out that the doctor for the prosecution, he didn't find he found everybody sane. He didn't find any of them insane, but then the one person in 85 who he said was sane, the verdict was overturned. It went up to going to a mental hospital, and he ended up treating the guy, and he ended up treating him for 10 years. So you're saying, well, if you were saying he was sane, would you need to treat him for 10 years? I like that little twist too.
Yeah, that was great because he was basically a professional doctor who was paid to testify that people were, of sound mind and body when they weren't. Yeah, there's all these like great little touches, and we lost Kara.
We did lose Kara. Hopefully she'll be back.
Yeah.
There's great and that's what I mean. The courtroom stuff I really enjoy. It was like the stuff outside of that just seemed to be so over exaggerated. Everything out, down to I understand Klan intentions, and there were stories of Klan doing it, down to the Klan wanting to bomb the lawyer's house. And I'm just like, I understand stuff like that kind of happened, but like every bad story you've ever heard of the Klan doing something, they do in this movie. It's like a culmination of all bad things that the Klan has ever done are done in this film. And
and also, I think Kevin Spacey is pretty great in this movie. As he was in a lot of movies back in that, especially in that heyday. But I just wish that his character hadn't been so sleazy outside the courtroom of like, find out what this guy's favorite scotch is and send it to his house or whatever. I'm reminded of Lane Smith's character in My Cousin Vinny.
Oh yeah.
He was the prosecutor on that murder case. And what I loved about him is that, he didn't like Vinny. They didn't get along because it was like the whole like big shot, Brooklyn lawyer versus the small town, Southern lawyer. But he was a gentleman about it. He's like, I'm going to win this case. He was confident in his abilities, and he played it, straight for the most part. I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but he didn't need to resort to anything to make a strong case. I think if I had any other besides the Rednecks, I would have taken out all that stuff about Spacey's character. He can be smarmy, he can be like full of himself, but the underhanded tactics, I'm like, it's just a little bit too on the nose.
You just need a little mustache to twirl at some point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that surprised me too, because I forgot that aspect with his character. And Jake calls him governor right off the bat because he's a DA who was running for governor. Or going to. It was no secret, and you're right though. I think it would have meant a little bit more had, if they were going to have him be on the sly like that, not show everything that like he did, like, oh, let's send this, maybe a little bit, you have it come out in court, like the doctor. You come out in court and then you can piece together, oh, this guy's a doctor for hire by the DA to do this stuff. Have it come out in court more so than the after or outside of court antics, And it's just like, and it's horrible. Don't get me wrong. What they do to Ellen's character later on in the movie. But at the same time, I'm sitting there going, I understand the guys are desperate, but these are the dumbest rednecks. Because I mean, I understand they didn't expect her to get help and escape, but still, Kiefer Sutherland's character shows his face. So many people are showing their face to her when they kidnap her that I'm just like, you better hope she doesn't like get away, because she could immediately identify you guys.
Well, they don't though. And my wife, she talked to me about this too. She's like, why aren't they even wearing masks or whatever? Well, it's dark. They catch her from behind. The only person that she maybe sees is a cop.
Right.
And then she's like, but what about the guy with the long hair? I'm like, yeah, however are you going to identify a guy in the South with long hair and a beard?
Yeah.
And then Sutherland, when he goes up to her when she's all tied up, he comes at her from behind. He's like whispering in her ear. And I don't know that they'd really interacted, so she wouldn't necessarily know that, oh, that's the guy that I was standing next to in court that whole time. Yeah, I understand the point, but I think that's kind of what Grisham / Schumacher / Akiva Goldsman was getting at with this, was that they were so confident in what they could get away with that they could show their faces in court the next day. Yeah, but that was, I had forgotten about that scene. I'm like, how the hell is she going to get out of this? And like, oh, it's Mickey Mouse to the rescue. And I thought it was oddly sweet, Yeah.
It was sweet, and you have at least a little bit of sympathy for the Mickey Mouse guy. You almost feel like he's in this because of peer pressure and such, because the Southies are his buddies, and they pressure him into the clan, because he's the one that gives a warning to McConaughey's family.
Oh yeah, get out of the house.
To get out of the house before the first cross is burnt on his lawn. Which again, I understand it's the South, but you would have thought they would have put a patrol car in front of his house, given the trial and given the fact that you have the Klan and protesters clashing on the first day of the trial. You would have thought, but nope, they didn't.
That would have been another nice little character detail, because they find out, well, we know very early on, but it comes out at the end of the movie that one of the sheriff's deputies or whatever is working with the Klan.
Right.
So if they had said, oh, maybe if they said, oh, this guy is supposed to be the one in the patrol car, like keeping an eye on their house, maybe that's how they know when they're coming and going, when they can do all this stuff. But they don't really do anything with that, except at the very end, Charles S. Dutton like shoves him in the group of the other guys, like, oh yeah, you're in with them too. I'm like, how long have you known this? How many people have been like nearly blown up and assassinated with you like figuring this shit out?
Well, no, he figured it out. I always took that as though, because they talked to Ellen in the hospital, and that's how they knew, because for the cop, how they knew he was part of it was that they had talked to Ellen, because it had been a day or two while she was in the hospital, so she could have,
I guess, but I don't know, maybe it's just a astonishingly low number of people in this police department. The numbers seem to change depending on whether or not you're dealing with like riot control or just like picking up drunk rednecks. But yeah, I guess it's just, again, that's something that could have been made a little bit clearer.
Yeah, it could have, but it's also, it's the one disadvantage of having so many big names, especially hot item names. And I can say hot item names in a film like this, because they were the hot items in the night. I'm not kidding, folks. If you look at the first 12 credits that show up during the opening credit sequence, every single one of them was in multiple films in the 90s. So they were all known names, so they all need their screen time. So in doing so, it feels like almost that took a little bit away from it, because oh nope, this character at least needs a few more lines so we can justify, having them in our movie.
The two people that I wish didn't have any lines were Oliver Platt's character.
Yeah.
Not his character, but Oliver Platt. Because, I'm sorry, and I illustrated this to my wife as we were watching it. There's a scene where he's in the office, I think, with Matthew McConaughey, and the secretary is in there, too, played by Brenda Fricker, tremendous actress, who was also the bird lady in Home Alone 2. She's English, I believe. Yeah. Oliver Platt is not. Neither of these two actors are from the South. Matthew McConaughey is. And when you hear the battle of the Southern accents, you're like, what the hell are these people doing? Like, you've got Oliver Platt saying, like, I do declare, this is going to be a crazy case, isn't it? And then you've got Brenda Fricker, like, trying to, like, squash down the proper Britness and also get some of that Southern iced tea in there. I'm like, no, just have a British secretary and have a Bostonite best friend. They don't all have to be from the South.
What'd you think of that, Cara, with the casting and the accents used?
I like the cast, and the thing that surprised me is I forgot how young everyone was in this movie.
Yeah. It is funny watching how many young, like Oliver, like everybody. You're just like, oh man.
Kiefer Sutherland even had a little bit of that baby fat still on him.
Yeah.
he was looking, he was still looking young. I think he looked, because this was after Flatliners, was it?
Flatliners was 90.
So he looked younger in this movie than he did in Flatliners or Lost Boys, for that matter. Maybe it's because he was more shaven in this one. I don't know.
Well, then he seemed to have aged about 15 years, but in 4 years, because it was soon after this that he played Jack Bauer in 24.
Oh, yeah.
He's like full-on adult fed man, yeah.
Well, and let's not forget he was also, the soldier in A Few Good Men. So
that was 93.
Was that 90? Was that after the
92?
Before this?
Yeah.
Ooh. So yeah, he had many looks back in the day. He looked a lot younger in this than he did in those films, for sure. But yeah, I mean, and then you get, like I said, the politics. It really, this film, I was like, how are they going to close it up? And then they closed it up strong. And I was happy with the way it ended. I mean, I think we miss sometimes happy endings in movies nowadays. But I like the ending because during it they talked about that there's still the racial divide between. In fact, it's one of the great scenes in this film is between McConaughey and Jackson, where Jackson's like, "No, I hired you because you're white." He's like, "I hired you because no matter what you try, you've been programmed like a white person and you don't see me as a person. So you think like them. You don't think like a black man."
It's nice, I guess, but the problem is it's also very racist. I get the point they're trying to make, and there's no way in 96 or in 2023, McConaughey's character is going to be allowed to turn that around on him and say, well, yeah, what do you think about white people? The door doesn't just swing one way, buddy.
Yeah, there is that. But I mean, it was a great acting moment. I understand though what you're saying. I thought there was a good moment between those two though. But and then they've been playing though that their kids wouldn't play at the end of it, and then at the end, the kids are playing together. So, See, it's even if the dads are just kind of like, yeah, the kids don't care, and I liked that. I don't know, I like that ending.
It's a great ending, but there's a part of me that I was just waiting for, McConaughey and Ashley Judd. They pull up with their kid in the car, and there's like the whole big like Sam Jackson's having the big like family barbecue, and all the black people in the movie are there, like even Charles S. Dutton, like they're all there because they all know each other. That's wow. But I was just waiting for the McConaughey's to pull up or whatever, and like, hey, we're here for the barbecue, and Sam Jackson to just pull out the motherfucker and just like, get off my property. You don't belong here.
That would be a twist.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah, but I mean, well, excuse me. You do get. That's one thing I like is though that they aren't exactly buddy at the end. I mean, they're I did like that angle that, and I think that's why they set up that scene earlier with Jackson telling his reasoning exactly of why he actually picked Jake. And then they get to the end, so they're not exactly like hugging and like, oh yeah, we won the case. Oh, you're great. You're my, we're like brothers now, and we're like, they're not like that. They're both.
There's not like a fist bump freeze frame.
There's like, there's no Dylan, you son of a bitch. There's no moment like that. They just kind of sit there and acknowledge, and where the kids. And that whole message, and I liked that message too.
Yeah, it is very corny, that whole like, I believe children are the future, but this has like that perfect illustration of it when the daughters just go like introduce themselves to each other. It's so like touching. It's perfect.
Well, and I being a parent myself, I've seen that to where you see a playground, the kids are just playing. They don't fucking care what you think. It's like, oh, you've got a ball, I got a ball. Hey, let's play. That's kids. The parents are on the side like, but the kids are like, I don't care. I'm looking for someone to play with, and you're here, so let's go play.
Yeah, it's gonna sound corny, but I a little before I came to record this, I took my oldest son to Taekwondo. I was watching for an hour, and I was getting that like cheesy parental misty-eyedness when you're just watching like a class of like, I don't know, 15 kids, and they're all different ages, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different races, and all just like coming together for a common goal of like bettering themselves and working together, and like having that feeling like we're gonna be okay, and then thinking, no, something's going to come along to like corrupt them and turn them against each other. This terrible society that we I have to hold on to this dream. Just one more day, please.
Hold on to that seed. Yeah. I believe the children are our future. You teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside.
Yes.
Give them a
sense of pride. Yeah.
Make it easier. Let the children laughter
remind us how it used to be.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Because I decided long ago. Sorry.
Hey, you're already straying into copyright.
I am. Yeah, I'm gonna sing like her. That's the way the copyright match. If it is, they really have something wrong with their algorithm. Cara, sorry. What'd you think of this ending with the film, with all the stuff that goes on, all the caricature stuff and the good and the bad? What'd you think of the way the film ended?
I liked it. I think it was well done. You also, or at least me, I kind of felt some sense of camaraderie between the two mothers, because the wife, she does walk over and she introduces the two little girls.
Right. And she brought peach cobbler, and she, the wives bonded over bakery, I guess, or something. I don't know. Grisham trying to write female characters. I don't know.
Recipe swapping.
Recipe swapping.
At least Ashley Judd didn't come up and say, sorry, I don't speak jive.
Oh, gosh.
And then you have Barbara Billingsley come up and go, it's okay, I speak jive. Oh, God. I just dated myself. Yes, folks, that was an airplane reference. Go look it up.
I'm surprised those guys weren't at the barbecue, like everybody. Oh man.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, A Time to Kill. Car, would you say a decent courtroom drama, or does it have its warts?
I think it's good.
Mhm.
All maybe stereotypes and cliches aside, I think it's a good story.
Mhm. Yeah, it is. It's an interesting story, and I think excuse me, and I think it's because of the talent. We have enough moments in this film that I think with lesser talent, even in the small roles, I think this film doesn't get across quite as well as it does, but it's the fact they have just so much talent packed into this film. They make the most of these scenes to where even the more cartoony, as Ian put it earlier, the more cartoonish type scenes you get through because people are just performing so well in this, in their roles. And that's how I feel with the end of this film too. Is that I'm like, okay, this, the way it came out and everything was definitely mid-90s, but I loved seeing everybody, all these actors on screen together. This is one of those where I think the ensemble works. What do you think, Ian?
Oh, totally. I mean, it's not just like, hey, it's all the hot actors in the 90s. It's all like the great, or a lot of the great character actors, and
Mhm.
even the big stars putting in, like, demonstrating their acting chops, and not in a corny like, oh, this is gonna get me the Oscar. But like it was almost like they came together to do a really cool like play, over a couple of weeks in the South. Um, we almost forgot, and it's one of the things I think is a real selling point of the movie is like all the fathers in the movie, you really see what family means to them, and we're put in this kind of moral conundrum of like, what would happen? What would I do if somebody did that to my daughters? Would I
Right.
let justice do its thing and hope everything worked out, or would I be like Sam Jackson and bring a machine gun into the courtroom or the courthouse? But there's that great scene where Chris Cooper, who played one of the cops, who was the one escorting the two,
Mhm.
criminals into the court that day, he gets his knee shattered in a bullet bounces off the floor and hits his knee and shatters it, and so they have to amputate part of his leg. Sam Jackson goes to visit him in the hospital, and it's just they've known each other since they were kids. There's all these great little details that come out, and you realize the depth of it. It's not just some stranger who's harboring a prejudice against the guy who did this thing. It's like they're like kind of friends or acquaintances. And then later, when Chris Cooper is on the stand, he's confronted with the question of like, do you want do you want Sam Jackson to die for what he did? And he's like, no, because if someone did that to my little girl, I would do the exact same thing. And he
Mhm.
yells at the jury. He's like, you got to let this guy go. it's that kind of stuff that makes me wish the entire movie was up at that
Right.
level. And it's just not really.
Well, and there's that setup before then because Jake wasn't going to ask any questions of him because
Right.
like here's a guy who was brought up by the prosecution. He's a prosecutor's witness. So 9 times out of 10 that witness is going to be hostile towards the defense, or the prosecution figures he's not going to make the defense look good. And it's a guy that lost his leg because of what Jackson did. And Jake's and Carl Lee's like, ask him if he thinks I should die for this. And Jake's pushing back like, no, what the fuck are you talking about? You took the guy's leg. That's the jury of white folk. You don't want me to ask if he thinks he should. He's like, all right. And that was a great setup too, between showing you that Carl Lee kind of knows certain people enough, at least the locals, on how they're going to react.
Right. And Chris Cooper's character, there wasn't even like a moment of
Mm-mm.
having to get it out of him. He's came right out and said like, hell no. You
Yeah,
shouldn't be punished. He's a hero.
yeah. He took my leg, but shit, I would have got to pop these guys too. What are you talking about? Which I know Spacey and modern days and think, but his character, he tells a lot with his face in this film, and it's fun watching his character's reactions when the witness doesn't go the way he expects it to. He does a lot with the pantomiming in that, and I really liked that, to where, you know, he doesn't say a lot in retaliation, or the fact that, oh fuck, you know, that they screwed our witness or whatever, but you could just tell by his posture and his look, like, ah, crap. Yeah, it's
Oh yeah, that great that scene at the end where McConaughey's giving his final remarks. I was waiting for Spacey to stand up and start objecting or something, but he's just looking around the room and realizing how, you know, how effective this is. And there's a part of me that the look on his face is like, well, yeah, he's really got a point. There's nothing to object to. I give up.
Well, he read the room. You know,
Yeah.
here's a guy going to be for governor, and as Jake is giving more and more of the horrific details of what happened to this poor young girl, yeah, he reads the room real quick, and he's like, yeah, no, you know what? I'm just gonna sit in my chair. I'm not gonna say a thing. And McConaughey does sell it. I mean, he, for a young actor, you know, with everybody else who he's in this film with, this is his moment for his character, and I think he nails the landing with it the way you want it to, with the way this film, you know, the way he delivers it with just enough weight, but not like Tom Cruise. I want the truth. You know, you don't get that type of.
What I think is so masterful about, especially that last line,
Yeah.
you know, imagine that girl is white. He, you know, he's choking up and everything, and he's really fighting to get the words out. But I love that we can see what's going through his head just by the way he is acting, because you know that his little girl is flashing. He's painting this picture with her in mind, all this stuff happening to her, and at the end it's just too much for him to consider, but he knows he has to get this point across. And yeah, it's masterful.
It is done well, and everybody, again, so much talent on the screen. The gentleman playing the judge in the background, even, you see his reaction till he's just like, oh damn, that was a good closing argument. He's like, you know, you can see it on his face. He doesn't say it, but he's like, oh shit, good job, boy. He's like, good job.
Well, I also love I know we're trying to wrap up here, but
No, it's okay.
Earlier in the film, when they're like, well, we're not going to get a fair trial in this county because it's like 75% white.
Yeah.
So we want to do a change of venue. And then McConaughey goes over to the judge's house and he's painting a landscape and shit.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, here's the thing. You know, if you want to move to a county that's, you know, 75% black, then that's not going to be a fair trial either. So since you can't get a fair trial anywhere in Mississippi, we might as well just keep it here. And I was like, that's brilliant thinking.
It actually,
it sucks, but it makes sense.
It sucked, but it was logical thinking. Yeah. Just a little nod, and you'll appreciate this, Ian. Akava Goldsman did get the Razzie Award nomination for worst written film grossing over $100 million, because this film grossed over $100 million in mid-90s, and he got a Razzie nomination for worst written film over $100 million at the box office.
Who did he lose to? Did it say?
I'm not sure who he lost to. Let's see. And normally I don't put a lot of weight in the Razzie Awards, but let's look at the Razzie Awards of '97 to close this out, will you? Whoa. Hey, Keanu Reeves was up for Chain Reaction, as was Sylvester Stallone for Daylight, Adam Sandler for Pick a Movie. I mean, Bulletproof and Happy Gilmore. Tom Arnold was up for Big Bully, Carpool, and The Stupids. Oh my God, that movie. And Pauly Shore was up for Biodome, and Pauly Shore and Tom Arnold won together, actually. And then look at these big names that were for worst actress. Demi Moore was up for The Juror and Striptease. Julia Roberts for Mary Riley. Melanie Griffith for Too Much. Pamela Anderson for Barbed Wire. Oh shit, that was 97 or 96. Barbed Wire, the folks, that's Casablanca with leather. And Whoopi Goldberg was up. But let's see. Worst director, Striptease director won there, Andrew Bergman. But he had good company. John Landis for The Stupids, John Frankenheimer for Island of Dr. Moreau, Brian Levant for Jingle All the Way was up for the worst picture Razzie. Worst new star was Pamela Anderson for Barbed Wire. What else? Oh man, that's right. Beavis and Butthead Do America was in 96.
That's criminal.
Striptease was up for worst song. It won. Worst picture was Striptease. Let's see. Worst screen couple was Striptease. While Barbed Wire really dodged a bullet.
Did Pam Anderson win the worst couple award?
No, worst couple was Striptease, Demi Moore and Burt Reynolds.
The joke flew right by you, didn't it, Mark?
No, it didn't, because it didn't with the Razzies either, because Pamela Anderson was up by herself for worst screen couple for her, as it's put, her impressive enhancements. So
I would have given that one to Demi Moore.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
So Marlon Brando won for worst supporting actor. But as far as, let's see, the screenplay okay, here's the 5 that were nominated. You tell me both, and this is how we're going to close it. This will be a great way to close it. Worst written film grossing over $100 million. Here are the nominees for the Razzies. You tell me who you think wins. A Time to Kill, Mission Impossible, the first one, Independence Day, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I didn't even know there was a version that came out in 96 for that.
The Disney one.
And Twister. Which of these 5 won for worst film grossing over $100 million?
Twister.
Oh, that is the animated Notre Dame. Yeah. What do you think, Kara?
Oh, I was thinking Independence Day.
Well, Ian is correct. Twister actually won the Razzie for worst written film grossing over $100 million, beating out Independence Day, A Hunchback of Notre Dame animated film, the first Mission Impossible, and yes, our film tonight, A Time to Kill. So there you have it, folks. There's a little Razzie info for you in case you're interested, now that everybody fell asleep. I appreciate you all for tuning in and your patience tonight. Hope you enjoyed our discussion. And if you did enjoy A Time to Kill, love to hear your thoughts. Please leave our comments on the podcast posting. And now, as always, we give our guests the license to shill. So, Ian, you're first then tonight. What do you got to shill, sir?
Well, thank you. I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. And also on YouTube, if you look up Kicking the Seat, I do movie reviews and interviews and live streams and stuff. And this week, I'll be doing as Mark alluded to earlier, a live stream roundtable review of The Marvels. It's going to be an actual bona fide debate because not everyone hates that movie, turns out, oddly enough. And then Friday, I'll be releasing an episode on Trolls Band Together, a conversation I had with Don Shanahan. We caught an early screening last week and recorded a conversation, and it'll be good to get that out to the world. So yeah, check it out, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I'm also here usually on Mondays.
Yeah, Tuesday tonight we did a little different, but we'll be back on Monday next week at our normal same bat time, same bat channel. And horror retrospective. Kara, please, license to shill is yours. Please shill away.
So you can catch me at Horror Retrospective on YouTube. Let's see, I've mostly been doing live streamed film discussions. I don't have anything coming up this Saturday, but there's tons of other discussions to go back and check through. If you're new or not familiar to the channel, there's definitely tons of film reviews or live discussions to check out.
Awesome, good stuff. I will put links for both these fine folks' work in the body of the description for this podcast. And I myself, specialmarkproductions.com, for all your movie man needs, should you be interested at all. I do have a wonderful interview I did earlier today that will be up with the director of a film called Pig Killer, starring Jake Busey, Michael Pere, as well as a slew of other actual known names. It is a film that is a slasher film based off of a real life serial killer in Canada that was convicted in 2006. He supposedly killed 49 people in real life. They found DNA evidence of 30 people, and they convicted him for 6 deaths of women. And this slasher movie, actually, I watched the movie first, and then I read up on it, and it touches on a lot of the moments that really happened in history. But Jake Busey plays the killer. Go figure. And it's that film comes out the 21st, but our interview will be dropping later this week. It was a fun interview, and I enjoyed the film quite a bit. I think it's an interesting one. And yeah, so you'll want to check that out. Keep your ears peeled to that. We got a lot of other content coming up. I got reviews coming. I got a backlog I got to take care of. So yeah. And I might just be on the Marvel show, Ian's Marvel show. We'll have to see because, I don't know if we needed to balance the hate or what, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for our live stream watchers as well. And until next time, we'll just say, all right.
All right.